Will you join me in prayer for a minute, please? Gracious God, as we come before you this morning, we seek you the full impact of your presence upon our lives, not really knowing what that exactly means, but trusting you to give us all good things. So may the words of my mouth and the meditation of each heart here be pleasing to you, O God, our rock and our salvation. Amen. I was in line on Friday afternoon to check out at Trader Joe's. Now, I know that Trader Joe's is one of the favorites of many of you in this congregation. I have heard many of you wax eloquently about shopping at Trader Joe's. Now, in all honesty, my experiences do not keep pace with yours. We'll just let that be our little secret. I was in the checkout line where I did it again. I didn't push my cart on the right side, which is the left side of the checkout line, but took it with me on my side. Dummy me. It was then that I noticed that the reason my line was so short was everyone else was standing on the proper side of the checkout line with their cart on the other side. So I went to look for another line. Well, I thought I had found one fairly short, so I put my cart in the proper side of the checkout line. Well, that was all fine and good until some lady slipped in front of me and pointed to her little basket, holding her place in line while she went off to pick up a few more items. I tried to be gracious, but I was really stewed. As I did the research for this sermon, I realized how much like the prodigal older brother I was. Indignant at someone who didn't follow the rules and who gained something on the sly, who received grace without earning it. I do not like feeling like the older brother. Now, I have resisted interpreting this parable for as long as I can. This parable, the story of the prodigal, is probably one of the most beloved, possibly the most beloved story in the Bible. No less than Ralph Waldo Emerson and Charles Dickens agreed in that assessment. It is because it is so beloved that I have resisted preaching and teaching about it. I really don't think I can win on this one. However, if you are game to listen to me, I am game enough to try. Seminary professor David Lose says this about the parables of Jesus. More often than not, we read Jesus' parables as if they were Aesop's fables, something from which we should derive a clever moral. But Jesus' parables are stories replete, unlike fables, with characters with whom you identify. Each of us has felt like the younger son, eager to get away, abashed by our mistakes, willing to do almost anything to get back to our old lives. Each of us has felt like the older brother as well, hardworking, diligent, and then resentful at the undeserved gain or unpunished wastefulness of another. And each of us has felt like the father in this story as well. desperate for the sign of a long-missed loved one, overjoyed by his or her unexpected return. So with which prodigal do you connect? Another approach is that of another seminary professor, Eric Barreto. Mr. Barreto writes, notice the father's reaction. The father is the main character of the parable, not the prodigal. This is not the story of a lost son, but a father who never ceases loving his ungrateful child. It is he who searches and yearns for his son's return. It is he who embraces his lost son, cutting off his apology in mid-sentence. It doesn't matter why the son has come, but only that he has come. This son was dead, and now he is alive. He was lost and is now found. This is why Jesus eats with sinners and tax collectors, with the despised and the grungy and the uncouth. This is precisely where God's heart is, with the lost and the dead. If God's grace tells us anything, it demonstrates how God not only wants the lost to be found and the blind to see, but the world to be whole. As long as a sister or a brother is wallowing in the pigsty of life, or labeled as untouchable, or fingered by the rest of us as not to be recognized or included or valued, then we all lose, because the whole is broken and God's heart is broken. Here is a grace that cannot be earned, cannot be merited by any of us, not even us righteous snobs. Here is a grace big enough to cover not only us with our noses in the air and our fancy automobiles in the parking lot. After all, we earned it. But also the undocumented who we think cheat the system, and the poor whose judgment and hard work we question because they need help from the government to survive. After all, we think we did build it. As we stand before the mercy seat with our brothers and our sisters, these kind of responses might point out our own unworthiness to be considered in the same batch as those we prejudge. The respected teacher of preaching, Tom Long, tells the following beautiful story. A woman was reminiscing about her father, and she said that when she was very young, she was very close to her father. She experienced this closeness in particular when there would be a big family gathering with all of the aunts and uncles and cousins. At some point, the old polka records would be put on the phonograph, and the family would dance. Now, those of you who are too young to know what a phonograph is, you probably want to Google that later on. The whole family would dance, and one of the favorites was the beer barrel polka. And when that music played, her father would come up to her, tap her on the shoulder, and say, "I believe this is our dance." And they would dance. One time, though, when she was a teenager, in one of those teenager kind of modes, the beer barrel polka played, and her father tapped her on the shoulder and said, "I believe this is our dance." And she snapped at him, "Don't touch me. Leave me alone." And her father turned away and never asked her to dance again. Our relationship was difficult. All through my teen years, the woman remembered. When I would come home late from a date, my father would be sitting there in his chair, half asleep, wearing an old bathrobe, and I would snarl at him, "What do you think you're doing?" And he would look at me with sad eyes and say, "I was just waiting on you." When I went away to college, the woman continued, I was so glad to get out of his house and away from him, and for years I never communicated with him. But as I grew older, I began to miss him. And one day I decided to go to the next family gathering. And when I was there, somebody put on the beer barrel polka. I drew a deep breath, walked over to my father, tapped him on the shoulder, and said, "I believe this is our dance." He turned toward me and said, "I've been waiting on you." This is grace you cannot merit. You can't earn it. You can't buy it. You can't store it up. It is a great day to be alive. Thanks be to God. Amen.